nestled at the foot of mist-shrouded hills. The village of Nuralin was a place where the earth whispered ancient tales, and the wind sang songs of the past. Life here moved with the gentle rhythm of nature, seasons changing in their time, the crops growing in harmony with the soil, and the villagers living in quiet contentment. But there was one part of their world that remained untouched, a place both revered and feared: the forest grove. The forest grove was a sprawling wilderness that lay just beyond the village's borders, an untamed expanse of towering trees, thick undergrowth, and an air that seemed to shimmer with a strange energy. The villagers spoke of it often, but not in the light-hearted tones one might reserve for an ordinary forest. It was the subject of hushed conversations and wary glances. Whispers of the forest's deep magic swirled like a fog in the village, and though many were drawn to its beauty, few dared to step beyond the edge. It was said that the forest grove held secrets, secrets older than the village itself, older than any living being could recall. Some believed the forest was alive with ancient forces, its roots entwined with the very fabric of the earth, its branches reaching toward realms unseen. Others, more cautious, warned of dangers, of strange occurrences that befell those who ventured too far. Yet no one seemed to know for sure, for none had dared to venture deep enough to uncover the truth. Among the villagers was Allure, a young woman whose spirit could never be satisfied by the ordinary rhythms of life. From a young age, she had been fascinated by the grove, its dark silhouette looming in the distance, calling to her in ways she couldn't explain. Unlike most, who kept a safe distance, Allure often found herself gazing toward the forest's edge, wondering what mysteries it might hold. The old stories told of the trees that whispered in the wind, of creatures that flitted between the shadows, and of a hidden heart deep within the forest, a place of power and magic. But Allure didn't fear the unknown. Instead, she felt a pull, a deep, inexplicable connection to the grove. It was as if the forest had been waiting for her, just as she had been waiting for it. She had heard the warnings, of course, tales of lost travelers, of strange lights flickering in the twilight, and the eerie silence that overtook the grove at night. Yet none of it could quell the fire of curiosity that burned within her grandmother, a wise woman who had seen many seasons pass, had always told her that some mysteries were better left unsolved. "The forest has its own rhythm, Allure," she would say, her voice tinged with the weight of unspoken knowledge. "It does not open its secrets to just anyone. It reveals them when the time is right." But Allure felt that the time had come. She could no longer resist the pull of the forest. It beckoned to her like a whisper on the wind, and this time she would answer. The hidden heart of the forest grove, its magic, its secrets, was waiting to be uncovered. And Allure was determined to be the one to unlock its mysteries. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, and the first stars began to pierce the twilight sky, Allure made a decision. She would walk into the heart of the grove, beyond the borders of the known, and discover what lay hidden within. The ancient forest was calling her, and she could not ignore its summons any longer. as the days grew shorter and the village of Nuralin sank deeper into the embrace of autumn, the forest seemed to grow even more mysterious. The wind, once gentle, now whispered through the branches in urgent tones, as if the trees themselves were trying to communicate something unknown. The pull Elara felt toward the forest grove became impossible to ignore. Each passing day, a reminder of the adventure that awaited. One evening, as she wandered near the edge of the village, Elara spotted an elderly traveler slowly making his way along the worn path that led into the woods. His weathered cloak billowed slightly in the breeze, and his staff, adorned with strange symbols, gleamed faintly in the twilight. He appeared as though he had been journeying for many years, his face etched with the wisdom of 1,000 stories. Elara, drawn by an instinct she couldn't explain, approached him. The old man's eyes met hers with an intensity that sent a shiver through her. They were sharp and clear, yet there was a deep sadness within them, as though he had seen things others could not. Without a word, he smiled gently, as though he had been expecting her. "The forest grove calls to you, does it not?" he said, his voice soft but filled with knowing. Alara's heart skipped a beat. "How did you?" "I've walked many paths in my time," the old man interrupted, his gaze unwavering. "And I know when the land speaks to one who is destined to hear it." He paused, as though choosing his words carefully. "But beware, child. The forest is not a place for the faint of heart. It holds truths that are not always easy to bear." Elara stood still, feeling both a sense of dread and exhilaration stir within her. The old man's warning was not one of fear, but of something deeper, an acknowledgement that the journey she was about to undertake would forever change her. "Why does it call to me?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. The traveler smiled, though his eyes remained somber. "The forest grove has a way of recognizing those who are meant to uncover its secrets. You are not the first to feel its pull, nor will you be the last. But be warned, child. The forest does not reveal its truths without a price." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Alara's mind raced. What could the forest hold that would require a price? Yet the question seemed insignificant compared to the weight of what he had said. The forest had called to her. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Before Elara could respond, the traveler raised his hand, offering her a small, intricately carved stone. It was smooth and cool to the touch, glimmering with a faint, otherworldly light. "This will guide you," he said, his voice low. "But it is not a guarantee of safety. The path you choose now will shape everything that follows." Elara took the stone, feeling its weight in her palm. For a moment, she stood frozen, her thoughts swirling. But then, something inside her hardened with determination. She knew, without a doubt, that this was the beginning of something far greater than she could have ever imagined. "Thank you," she said softly, tucking the stone into the folds of her cloak. With a final nod, the old man turned and disappeared into the twilight, leaving Elara alone with her thoughts. The village behind her was now distant, its lights a soft glow against the darkness. Before her lay the forest grove, shrouded in mystery, its edges just within reach. With a deep breath, Alara stepped forward, her heart beating with both fear and excitement. The call had come. She could feel it in the air, in the ground beneath her feet. She was no longer a mere observer of the forest's mysteries. She was about to become a part of them. The forest awaited. As Alara stepped into the shadow of the trees, a hush seemed to fall over the land. The sounds of the village, laughter, chatter, the clinking of tools faded away, replaced by the quiet murmur of the forest. It was as if the world outside the grove no longer existed, and the ancient woods had claimed her as its own. The air felt thick, charged with an unseen energy, and the earthy scent of moss and damp leaves filled her senses. The path before her was narrow, winding between tall, gnarled trees whose branches intertwined to form a canopy of deep green. Every few steps, the sunlight filtered through the thick foliage, casting dappled patterns on the forest floor. Despite its beauty, there was something unsettling about the silence that enveloped her. The usual sounds of birds and animals seemed distant, muffled, as though the creatures of the forest had gone into hiding, watching her with unseen eyes. Alara walked slowly, the weight of the small stone in her pocket, a constant reminder of the journey she had begun. The traveler's words echoed in her mind. The forest holds truths that are not always easy to bear. She couldn't shake the feeling that the forest was alive, watching her every move. The trees, their trunks twisted and knotted, seemed to lean toward her as if they were trying to speak, their branches creaking in the wind. Yet, no matter how much she looked, she saw no creatures, no signs of life beyond the rustling leaves. After a while, the path began to curve, leading her deeper into the grove. The trees grew taller, their bark blackened by age, their roots twisting like veins beneath the earth. The air grew cooler, and the light grew dimmer as the canopy thickened, filtering out more of the sun's rays. The stone in her pocket seemed to pulse with warmth, as if responding to the energy of the forest. Alara's senses sharpened with each step. The quiet was not an absence of sound, but a deeper presence, a symphony of nature that vibrated beneath the surface. She could feel it in her bones, the hum of the earth, the gentle rustle of the leaves, the faintest whisper of a breeze. It was as though the forest itself was singing to her, a song older than time. But as she ventured further, she began to notice strange things, subtle, almost imperceptible shifts in the environment around her. The shadows seemed to flicker, shifting just out of her line of sight. Every now and then, a faint glow would appear in the distance, vanishing the moment she turned to look. The ground beneath her feet, once solid, seemed to shift in places, as though the earth itself was breathing. Suddenly, Alara stopped. The air around her felt charged, and for a moment she couldn't move. A strange sound, like the rustle of wings, echoed through the trees. She turned, but saw nothing, only the thick underbrush, undisturbed and still. Her heart quickened. Was it the wind? Or was something watching her from the shadows? A few steps further, and the trees began to thin, opening into a small clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a magnificent tree, unlike any Alara had ever seen. Its bark was a rich, golden hue, and its roots spiraled outward in intricate patterns, almost as if they were reaching for the sky. Above, the tree's branches spread wide, forming an intricate web of leaves that glowed faintly in the dim light, as though the tree was alive with an inner fire. Elsa stepped closer, her breath catching in her throat. The air around the tree was thick with magic, and the soft hum she had been hearing now resonated louder, more distinct. The tree seemed to pulse with a life force of its own, its ancient energy calling to her. She felt an overwhelming sense of awe and reverence, as though she had stumbled upon something sacred, a place of power that existed outside of time. Without thinking, Elsa reached out and touched the tree's bark. The moment her fingers made contact, a surge of warmth shot through her, filling her with a sudden clarity. Images flashed in her mind, visions of the forest, the land, and a time long past. She saw the grove in its prime, untouched by human hands, its magic thriving and spreading outward. She saw beings, creatures of light, shadow, and ancient power, who had once walked the forest, guardians of its secrets. But then, the visions shifted. Dark figures emerged, shadowy and indistinct, and they seemed to be encroaching upon the forest, tearing at its roots, threatening the balance that had existed for centuries. Elsa gasped, pulling her hand away from the tree as the visions faded, leaving her breathless and shaken. The grove had a secret, a truth buried deep within its roots, and she had just begun to uncover it. But as the images disappeared, one question lingered in her mind. Why had the forest chosen her? The tree's faint glow dimmed slightly, and Elsa felt a presence, strong, ancient, and wise, watching her. The forest had spoken to her, showing her a glimpse of its history and its peril. And now, it seemed, the time had come for her to play her part in its fate. She took a deep breath, her mind racing with the enormity of what she had just witnessed. The journey was only beginning, and the answers she sought were still hidden, deep within the heart of the forest grove. But she knew one thing for certain. The grove had called to her, and she could not turn back. The moments after Elsa pulled her hand away from the ancient tree were filled with a heavy silence, broken only by the faint rustling of leaves in the breeze. She stood frozen in place, her mind spinning from the visions that had flashed before her eyes. The images had come and gone in an instant, but their impact had lingered like ripples on a pond, stirring something deep within her. She could feel the weight of the forest's secrets pressing against her, begging to be understood. For a moment, Elsa thought the tree had no more to say, that the mysterious force she had sensed was gone. But as the golden tree pulsed faintly, she realized that it was still very much alive with energy. The hum that had been present before now seemed to vibrate through the very ground beneath her feet, and the air around her thickened. It was as though the forest had drawn her here for a reason she was not yet ready to understand. Her fingers tingled where they had touched the bark, and instinctively, she reached out once more, only this time, her hand hovered just above the surface. Without warning, a soft voice, ancient and deep, filled her mind, a voice that did not speak with words but resonated in the core of her being. "You are the one who has been chosen to restore what was broken. the voice whispered, and the air around her seemed to hold its breath. Elara's heart pounded as the realization began to dawn on her. She had not stumbled into this grove by chance. The forest had been waiting for her, calling her, drawing her to this very spot. She had been chosen, but for what purpose? The balance is shifting, the voice continued, its tone filled with a deep sorrow. The magic that once protected the grove, that kept the world in harmony, is fading. Dark forces, long thought vanquished, now rise once more, seeking to claim the heart of the forest and unravel the bond between nature and humanity. Elara's breath caught in her throat. The visions she had witnessed of the grove in its prime, of the dark figures, were more than just memories. They were a warning, a sign that the forest's ancient power was in danger of being lost forever. "The forest is dying," the voice said, a trace of anguish in its words. "And so too will the land, the village, and all that you hold dear. The root of this darkness lies within the heart of the grove. You must find it, Elara. You must restore the balance before it is too late." A chill ran down her spine. The weight of her task settled upon her, and the enormity of the revelation left her breathless. This was no simple adventure, no harmless curiosity to be satisfied. The fate of the entire village, the forest, and the world itself rested in her hands. Elara's mind raced with questions. How was she supposed to stop this darkness? What was she meant to do? But before she could voice them, the voice spoke once more. "The key lies within you," it said, its tone both comforting and unsettling. "You have the strength, the will to save the grove, but you must first awaken the power that sleeps within you. Only then will you be able to face the shadows that threaten to consume all." The world around her seemed to shift, and the clearing grew quieter. The hum of the tree's energy faded slightly, leaving behind a profound sense of stillness. Elara felt a surge of warmth within her chest, as though something deep inside her was stirring. She closed her eyes, focusing on the feeling, the pulse of power that seemed to echo through her body, like a heartbeat resonating with the earth itself. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet trembled slightly, as though acknowledging her presence. When she opened her eyes, the clearing seemed different. The golden tree before her had transformed. Its bark was now radiating a soft, ethereal light, and its branches swayed, not in the wind, but in response to some unseen force. The tree's roots shifted, parting slightly to reveal something hidden beneath the earth, a small, glowing stone, much like the one the traveler had given her earlier. Without thinking, Elara knelt down and reached for the stone, her hand guided by some instinct she could not explain. As soon as her fingers touched the stone, a rush of energy flooded her, filling every fiber of her being. Visions flashed before her eyes once more, but this time they were different. She saw herself, standing tall, her hands glowing with power, her heart open to the forest's magic. She saw the darkness, shadows rising from the depths of the earth, threatening to engulf everything in their path. And she saw the tree, its golden light fading, its roots weakening. But amid the chaos, Elara saw the way forward. She saw herself confronting the darkness, standing before it with the strength of the forest behind her. She saw herself wielding the power that had always been there, waiting for the moment when she was ready to embrace it. The visions faded as quickly as they had appeared, leaving Allure with a newfound sense of clarity. The forest had revealed its truth. The magic, the power, the balance, it was all intertwined, and Allure was the key to restoring it. The path ahead would be fraught with danger, but now she knew what she had to do. With the glowing stone in her hand, Allure stood, her resolve solidifying. The forest had chosen her, and she was ready to answer its call. The darkness would not consume the grove. She would not let it. Allure's newfound purpose burned like a fire in her chest. Yet, as the weight of the task ahead settled upon her, the challenges that lay in her path became clearer. The vision had given her a glimpse of the power she would wield and the victory that awaited. But it had also shown her the danger, the darkness, and the cost of failure. The forces that threatened the forest grove were far more ancient and powerful than she had ever imagined. They were not of flesh and blood, but of shadow and malice, beings that existed in the spaces between light, their only desire to consume all that was pure. As she made her way deeper into the heart of the forest, a tension hung thick in the air. The grove, once filled with an ethereal calm, now seemed to pulse with an undercurrent of fear. The wind had shifted, and the branches creaked as though the trees themselves were warning her. The path before her had become narrower, the shadows darker, and the once soothing whispers of the forest had turned to anxious murmurs. It was as if the very life force of the grove was being suffocated by an unseen presence. Allure's hand tightened around the glowing stone in her pocket. She could feel its warmth, its power, but she knew that power alone would not be enough to defeat the darkness that lurked at the forest's core. It would take more than magic. It would take courage, wisdom, and strength. The balance of the forest was in jeopardy, and she was the only one who could restore it. As she walked, the air around her grew heavy, charged with an energy she could not comprehend. The trees seemed to close in on her, their bark twisting and groaning as if in pain. And then, from the depths of the grove, she heard it, a low, guttural growl, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Something was coming, something ancient and hungry. Her pulse quickened, and she turned to look behind her, but saw nothing. Still, the feeling of being watched was undeniable. The shadows moved, twisting unnaturally, as though they were alive, shifting around her with purpose. Allure took a cautious step forward, then another, her eyes scanning the darkened forest, waiting for the threat to reveal itself. The conflict had begun, but the true enemy had yet to show itself. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet cracked with a deafening roar, and the earth trembled. From the darkness ahead, two glowing eyes appeared, their yellow light piercing through the fog that had begun to swirl around the trees. The creature that emerged from the shadows was like nothing Allure had ever seen, its form shifting between smoke and solid matter, its body writhing as if it were made of the very darkness itself. It was massive, towering over her, its face a twisted, snarling visage of ancient rage. "You are the one chosen to save this place." The voice was a raspy whisper, filled with malice and amusement. You, a mere mortal, think you can challenge the darkness that has claimed this forest. Allure stood her ground, her heart hammering in her chest. She could feel the force of the creature's presence, its power radiating outward like a storm. The darkness itself seemed to crawl and slither around her, seeking to invade her mind, to twist her thoughts. But she refused to give in. She had seen the truth of the forest's power, and she knew that she could not fail. "I won't let you destroy this grove," she said, her voice steady despite the fear that clawed at her insides. "The forest is alive, and its magic is stronger than you can understand." The creature let out a low, menacing laugh. "The forest's magic? Foolish girl, the forest is weak, withering, and soon it will be mine." With a growl, the creature lunged forward, its shadowy form shifting with terrifying speed. Allure barely had time to react as it bore down on her, its claws reaching for her throat. In that instant, the stone in her pocket flared with blinding light, and instinctively, Allure held it out before her. The stone hummed, vibrating in her hand, and a wave of power surged from it, creating a barrier of light that pushed the creature back. It howled in fury, but Allure could see the fear in its glowing eyes. The light from the stone had hurt it. Its power was not as infinite as it had seemed. The realization sent a surge of hope through her, but the creature wasn't done yet. "You think you can defeat me with your puny light," it snarled, its form rippling as it reformed into a darker, more menacing shape. "The light will fade, and the shadows will reclaim this world. You are no match for what is coming." The shadows around her thickened, swirling in a vortex of darkness. The air became suffocating, and the once gentle whispers of the forest turned into anguished cries, like the very trees were being torn apart. Allure's knees trembled, but she stood firm, knowing that the battle she was fighting was only the beginning. The true enemy was not this creature alone. It was the force that sought to undo the very magic that kept the forest and the world in balance. With a deep breath, Allure closed her eyes and called upon the strength she had felt within her, the power of the grove, the power of the earth. The stone pulsed in her hand, and she felt a connection to something greater than herself. The light from the stone intensified, pushing back against the darkness, and she knew that the true conflict had only just begun. The shadows would fight back, but so would she. The air around Allure crackled with raw energy as she faced the shadowy creature, the ground beneath her feet trembling with the force of its presence. The stone in her hand pulsed, its warm light seeping through her veins, filling her with a newfound strength. But despite the power coursing through her, the darkness was relentless, pressing in on her from all sides, threatening to swallow everything in its wake. The creature's form was a swirling mass of shadow, its glowing yellow eyes locked onto her with a malevolent gaze. It circled her like a predator, its voice low and menacing. "You cannot stop me. I am the darkness that was born before time, the void that consumes all light. Your light is a flicker in the vast expanse of my power." Allure's heart pounded in her chest, but she refused to falter. The whispers of the forest had grown louder, almost deafening, as though the very trees themselves were urging her on, calling her to embrace the magic that flowed through the land. The tree, the golden one, had shown her the way. She had seen the vision of herself standing strong, confronting the darkness. The grove had placed its faith in her, and now she had to place her faith in herself. With a deep breath, Elara stepped forward, raising the glowing stone high above her head. The light intensified, bathing the clearing in a brilliance that pushed back the shadows, forcing the creature to recoil. The dark mass hissed, its form shifting and writhing in the light's embrace. "You think you can stand against me with your light?" The creature spat, its voice like nails on stone. "You are nothing. The darkness is eternal." But Elara's resolve only strengthened. She closed her eyes, centering herself, drawing on the strength of the grove, the earth, the very life force that sustained the land. She felt the pulse of the forest in her veins, a rhythm older than time itself, and she understood. The stone was not just a weapon, it was a key. It was the conduit to the ancient power of the grove, the magic that had once kept the world in balance. And now, it was her responsibility to channel it. She raised her other hand, and the light from the stone flared brighter, converging into a blinding beam that shot out toward the creature. The shadow recoiled, howling in fury, but the light was too strong. It pierced through the darkness, unraveling the creature's form, disintegrating it piece by piece. The very essence of the void seemed to burn away under the intense light, until there was nothing left but the sound of the wind in the trees. But the battle was far from over. As the creature disintegrated, a new, even darker force began to take shape. The ground cracked open beneath Elara's feet, and from the fissures, tendrils of pure shadow reached out, wrapping around her legs, pulling her down toward the earth. The forest itself groaned in pain, as though it, too, was struggling against the encroaching darkness. Elara fought to keep her footing, but the tendrils tightened, pulling her closer to the ground. Her breath quickened, panic rising in her chest as she felt the forest's energy begin to wane. The shadows were overwhelming, and she could feel the life force of the grove slowly slipping away. But then she remembered the vision. The light had not come from the stone alone. It had come from her, from the deep well of strength that lay within her. The grove had chosen her not because of the stone, but because of the power she carried within her. It was time to awaken that power. With every ounce of will she could summon, Elara closed her eyes and reached deep within herself. She felt the stone's warmth once more, but this time, it was different. It was no longer a separate force, but a part of her. The light that had been a simple beam before now swelled within her, like the force of 1,000 suns, and she unleashed it. A blinding explosion of light erupted from Elara's chest, shooting upward and outward in every direction. The tendrils of darkness shrieked in agony as the light consumed them, erasing them from existence. The earth trembled as the forest's ancient magic surged back to life, its power flowing through Elara and into the heart of the grove. The golden tree above her pulsed with renewed energy, its branches swaying in the wind as the light enveloped it. The darkness fought back, but it was no match for the force of the forest's magic. now fully awakened within Allure. The shadows writhed and screamed, but they could not withstand the purity of the light. One by one, the tendrils of darkness dissolved, and the creature that had once been so powerful was finally erased from the grove. As the light faded, Allure collapsed to her knees, exhausted but triumphant. The forest was still, its once suffocating air now fresh and pure. The golden tree above her glowed brightly, its energy now fully restored, and the ground beneath her feet hummed with life. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, as if in response to her victory, the whispers of the forest returned, soft and soothing, a symphony of life that filled the air. The grove had been saved, the darkness defeated, and the balance had been restored. Allure stood, her body weary but her heart alight with a deep sense of fulfillment. The journey had been long and the battle hard, but she had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. The forest had called her and she had answered. The grove was safe, and so was the world. The sun began to set, casting a warm, golden light over the forest grove, as though the land itself was breathing a sigh of relief. The darkness that had once threatened to consume everything had vanished, leaving in its wake a profound stillness. Allure stood at the heart of the grove, her body weary but her spirit alight, feeling the soft hum of magic in the air around her. She could hear the rustling of the leaves, the songs of birds in the distance, and the steady flow of the nearby stream, as if the forest had found its rhythm again, its balance restored. The golden tree before her pulsed softly, its branches now full and vibrant, as though thanking her for her courage and determination. The glow from the stone in her hand had faded, but its warmth remained within her, a reminder of the power she had awakened. The very ground beneath her feet seemed to hum with life, and she felt connected to every leaf, every root, every inch of the forest. She had done it. The grove was saved. The darkness had been vanquished, but Allure knew that her journey was far from over. The forest had chosen her not just to fight the shadows, but to become its protector, its voice in the world. She had glimpsed the future, seen the world's fragility, and understood her place in the delicate balance between nature and humanity. It was not just the grove that needed her, it was the world itself. The forest had shown her what was at stake, and she could not walk away now. As she stood there, taking in the beauty and peace that had returned to the grove, she heard a familiar sound, a soft rustling, followed by the faintest of footsteps. Turning, she saw the traveler, the one who had given her the stone. His figure emerged from the trees, his face shadowed, but his eyes filled with approval. "You have done well," he said, his voice calm and steady, but with a hint of pride. "The balance has been restored, but your true journey has only just begun." Allure nodded, her heart swelling with a mixture of relief and resolve. "I understand now," she replied. "This grove, this power, it is not mine to keep. I was chosen to protect it, to guide it back to its rightful place in the world. But there are many more like it. The balance is fragile, and the darkness will always seek to return." The traveler smiled softly. "Indeed, and that is why you must be ready. The world will need its protectors, its guardians. The magic you have awakened within you is not just for this grove. It is for all of nature, all of life. Elara felt a deep sense of purpose stir within her. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was hers to walk. She had found strength she never knew she possessed, and she knew that her connection to the forest would be a guiding force in her life. The journey she had embarked on was not just to save this grove. It was to safeguard the balance of the world, to ensure that the light would always outshine the darkness. "I will protect it," Elara vowed, her voice steady, firm. "I will protect the grove and all that it stands for." The traveler gave a single nod, his eyes glinting with approval. "You are not alone. The forest will always be with you, as will the guardians of the land. The path will be difficult, but you are ready. Remember, Elara, the true power lies in your heart. Trust in it, and you will never falter." With those final words, the traveler turned and disappeared into the trees, leaving Elara alone once more in the quiet of the grove. But she was no longer the same person who had first stumbled upon this place. She had been forged in the fire of conflict, shaped by the magic of the land, and made stronger by the knowledge of her true purpose. The weight of the forest's trust rested on her shoulders, but she carried it with a newfound sense of confidence. As night fell and the stars began to twinkle above, Elara walked to the center of the grove. She knelt, placing her hands upon the earth, feeling the pulse of the land beneath her fingers. The magic was alive, as vibrant and powerful as ever, and it was hers to protect. The battle had been won. The darkness had been defeated, and with the dawn of each new day, the forest would continue to thrive, its secrets safe once more. But Elara knew that her work was just beginning. The world was vast, and there were many more forests, many more places where the balance could be threatened. She had seen the signs, felt the stirring of something greater. The journey ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but she was ready. The forest had chosen her, and she would answer that call, for as long as the stars shone in the sky and the wind whispered through the trees, she would stand as its protector. The forest grove was safe, but the world was waiting, and Elara was ready to face whatever came next.